My name is Maddie. I am the social media strategist at MarineLab. I am also a field instructor at MarineLab. So today I am going to be giving you all a behind the scenes tour of MarineLab's campus. It's one of the very first things that our students get to experience when they first hop off of their bus or van. So I thought it would be a great way to introduce some of our followers to the goings on of MarineLab when we can't actually be here with you guys. Before we get started on that tour, I do want to give everyone a bit of background and history on what MarineLab is. A lot of questions that we get are just like, what is MarineLab? So I'm going to give you a little bit of the history behind that. It actually all started back in 1970. So a scientist named Jan Koblik was working in the US Virgin Islands, and he actually began a foundation called the Marine Resources Development Foundation. And that's actually our parent organization. So through the 1970s up through about the early 1980s, Mr. Koblik was working with this Marine Resources Development Foundation, MRDF, in order to build, design, and develop what are called underwater research stations or underwater research habitats. One of those habitats actually is right behind me. It's obviously been pulled up out of the water and now functions on our campus as a museum. So for about 15 years, Mr. Koblik was working on developing these underwater research stations. This was a really interesting field. It allowed scientists all over the world essentially to live and work underwater. The idea was to build houses that could stay functioning underwater and labs that could stay functioning underwater. And that was what his main goal was with MRDF, Marine Resources Development Foundation. Then, in about 1985, Mr. Koblik turned his interest towards South Florida, the Florida Keys and the Reef Tract here, as well as education in marine sciences. So in 1985, our campus that we're going to tour today was purchased, and at that point it was kind of a mishmash of lots of different buildings that have since been completely renovated, redone to create the MarineLab campus that you guys are going to see today. Some things like a restaurant were on site, and that's been completely converted into our cafeteria. So it was really interesting to sort of see how the entire campus came together. Then the next year in 1986, that was when the Education and MarineLab Environmental Education Center, what we are today, was launched. So Mr. Koblik teamed up with another scientist named Art Mitchell, and Art Mitchell was responsible for creating our core curriculum. Some of those classes that we actually still teach today. If you guys have been lucky enough to come to MarineLab and do a zooplankton or invertebrate diversity rock shake lab, or even if you've seen them on our Facebook Live or you're watching them on our virtual website, you've learned from Art Mitchell. Those classes were some of the very first ones that he developed to bring to our students. So all of that began in 1986. That was the launching of MarineLab Environmental Education Center. A little ways down the year, in 1986, a third member joined that really dream team of Koblik and Mitchell, and her name was Jeanette Hughes. So she was able to expand and extend our education programming, working with those men, and she is actually our current CEO. So she has been with us all from the beginning of the MarineLab Environmental Education Center. Today, MarineLab functions as a campus for students to come and essentially be a scientist for a little while. Whether it's a day or an overnight stay for a few days or a week, students are able to learn and explore the Florida Keys ecosystem here. All the way from snorkeling out at the coral reef to collecting data for citizen science experiments, to classroom discussions about marine ecology. So there's tons and tons of scientific exploration, essentially, that happens at our education center today. So that's a little bit of the background of how MarineLab got started. And now I'm gonna go ahead and take you guys on the tour of our campus, that one that started all the way back in '85 and has since become the beauty it is today. I do also want to be able to answer any questions you guys might have about our history, or just about how we function on a day-to-day basis. And I actually have some pre-written questions from some of you guys that answered on our Instagram story last week. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. So let me go ahead and scroll through this. As what you guys are looking at right now is the original undersea habitat that was created under Marine Resources Development Foundation back in the 1970s. So it actually used to be in and submerged in the lagoon right here, where a lot of our students go snorkeling for their very first time in the water. And it's sort of the jewel of MarineLab, as it's the founding point for MarineLab. All right, so now we're going to actually walk towards the main campus. And like I said, if you guys have any questions about anything I just talked about, or just what it's like here in the Keys, how MarineLab gets its everyday functioning happening, feel free to type them in that comment box. All right, so we've officially entered MarineLab property. And this is the area that we call the big building. Obviously, it's a pretty self-explanatory name since it's a really big building. This is where the majority of our classes and labs occur, and as you can tell from the volleyball court, it's where most of our students have a little bit of downtime, can enjoy a nice fun game of volleyball. And as we're in the Keys, we love to have those bright colors. It also helps a lot with assigning rooms when we have tons and tons of students here. So we're gonna visit room 10, a crowd favorite. Just so you guys can see kind of what's going on inside our dorm rooms. So we've got lots and lots of nice little bunk beds here. And we do have air conditioning. That is a very popular question. It was actually one of the questions we got from Nicole earlier in the week. But yes, we do have AC, a really, really nice perk here in the Keys. All right, so that's the majority of the big building. I am gonna show you the labs, which are also downstairs in the big building. Of course, right now, everything is a bit deconstructed, but we are doing all of our virtual labs, our virtual live streams and things like that through our labs here. So this is our green lab, set up for tons of students. And then we have our large TV, which we're using for a lot of our virtual live streaming. If you guys haven't had a chance to visit our website, marinelab.org, and see some of our virtual classes, I highly recommend it. It's super fun to be filming them because we are all teachers and instructors here at MarineLab, so we obviously want to be able to continue that education. And they're all posted online at marinelab.org underneath our virtual site, which you can find there. All right, now we're getting out to a windier area, so I'm very sorry if you guys get a little bit of that wind feedback on the phone, but it's worth the view. This is our boat ramp leading into Largo Sound, which is one of the areas that students are able to snorkel in. It's actually also where we complete our seagrass surveys with instructors and with students. And it's where we house our live rocks for that invertebrate diversity lab that I talked about that Art Mitchell had developed. I'm seeing a lot of comments about the air conditioning. Trust me, that has been something that we have been constantly improving upon, and I think that we finally have it down. We've got some real nice air conditioners set up in there at this point. All right, our next stop is going to be this floating houseboat right here. One of the coolest parts about MarineLab is that you're pretty much always learning on the water. Even in our discussion classes, you are sitting in a floating houseboat, which we call the FCC, the Floating Conference Center, and learning about coral reefs, seagrasses, mangroves, fish, whatever it may be. And it's always fun to sort of cross over into the floating learning environment. Oh, and of course I forgot to unlock the FCC. We'll come back around to that, don't worry. All right, next stop is the pavilion. So you can kind of tell most of MarineLab is an outdoor campus. It's a walking campus. It's obviously very small, nothing like a college campus, but it's a lot of, transferring from place to place. And we're here in Key Largo, so we typically have some really nice weather to be able to enjoy as we're walking from the big building to the pavilion to the FCC. All right, so this area is our pavilion. And this is the spot that most of our students will come to just hang out, to wait until they get on their boat trips. And there's a lot of really fun activities in here. Number one, we have this amazing sperm whale skeleton, which was recovered by Jeanette Hughes, our current CEO, back in the 80s. So this was recovered from the mangroves. It had died of natural causes and washed up in the mangroves. And now our instructors have converted it into this awesome educational display. Another really cool thing is our fish identification table, where we've got lots of ID cards for students to be able to practice all of their fish identification after they've taken their classes. A knot tying station to practice your nautical skills, and the ever famous Tiki Man who guards our lost and found, which even though we don't have any students, it still somehow has lost items in it. So we actually got a couple of questions about our Tiki Man as well. Last week, Megan asked, how old is Mr. Tiki Head? And while a great question, I have absolutely no idea. I do know that Mr. Tiki Man survived Hurricane Irma. So another question that we had from a Rachel asked, how did the last hurricane you experienced change the MarineLab campus? So one of the small things was that Mr. Tiki Man over here was actually all the way across the boat basin inside one of our gear lockers, which we're going to explore next. So that really heavy object was essentially lifted up by the sea level rise and transported completely 100 feet away. Another thing that happened during Hurricane Irma was most of our waterfront property right here was completely destroyed or damaged, really beyond what it looks like now. So all of the MarineLab instructors, as well as our maintenance staff and really just the entire MarineLab team, was able to revamp and reconstruct our gear locker area. And this is one of the most fun areas because, of course, this is where you get to come and rent all of your snorkel gear if you are on a trip with us. So we've got our wetsuits and our snorkel vests and our snorkels and masks, all of which right now, of course, are locked away so that they stay clean and safe and undisturbed while we're on this virtual break. And you guys are getting a bit of a sneak peek at our boat basin. So back in 1985, were when the very first boats in our fleet were purchased. So today we've got a lot of new boats, newly adapted ones. In total, we have 4 26-foot twin V boats and 1 29-foot twin V boat. And that's what we use to take our students out to the reef, take them into the mangrove habitat. Really just allows them to actually explore and learn about these environments up close and firsthand. All right, one last stop before we come back out is our cafeteria. Because MarineLab campus is a totally all-encompassing campus, you're able to sleep and eat here as well as learn all about being a scientist. And we have some of the best food around, I've heard. We've gotten great rave reviews from a lot of our students. So again, of course, it's shut down for our closure right now. But one of the best parts of the cafeteria is when we have students, a lot of them will leave behind their t-shirts that they've signed, and we are able to hang them all up so that we can remember them and think of all the fond memories that we've had with all of our students. So we have a whole entire wall of some of these awesome t-shirts that you guys have all signed, which is really one of my favorite parts of the cafeteria, and I think a lot of the MarineLab instructors' favorite part. All right. All right, so the very last spot we're gonna take you is right back where we started, to the MarineLab undersea habitat and the Emerald Lagoon. And if you guys have any questions while I'm walking over that way, type them in, and I am more than happy to answer them. I've gone through, oh wait, I missed one of my questions. It was from another Rachel. It said, what is the coolest spot on campus? And obviously that is very subjective based on, whoever is answering the question. But for me, my absolute favorite spot is the outdoor showers. So we do obviously have, bathroom facilities, but since we're here in the subtropics and we go out snorkeling in the salt water, we have outdoor showers that allow you to rinse off a little bit of that salt after you've gone out snorkeling for the morning. And it's just, I don't know why, it's just my favorite thing to be able to stand in the hot sun and rinse off that salt water while you're looking out into this beautiful environment. So we've got those outdoor showers right here. I guess it is kind of an odd preference for me to have, but I love it. If anyone knows the names of our boats, type them in the comments. We'll see how many you guys can get right. I'll give you one because you can see his name right there, or her name. Okay, we've got a question from Neil. It says, do you guys call the underwater garden Nemo's Garden? I can't remember that it was ever put in. So there is a underwater garden in the Emerald Lagoon where we're about to see. But it was never fully completed, so it's still currently under construction. But it is one of those awesome things that you can see when you're on that first snorkeling experience in the lagoon. Cassie, you're right, there is a boat named Jumbie. The other boats are Loki, Hallie, and Louie. Loki, Hallie, Louie, Jumbie. I think that's it. Oh, and Malby, our favorite. Also seeing a lot of comments about the temperature of the water. The water temperature does fluctuate here in the Keys. Everyone thinks it's usually, perfect 90-degree water, but it does fluctuate, especially on the bay side, although it's still always warmer than way up north. All right, so I'm gonna let you guys continue enjoying this beautiful view for a bit. If we've got any last minute questions, I'll answer those for you. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed kind of getting a little taste of MarineLab when we can't actually have people here. I hope everyone is staying safe, and I hope that these live streams that MarineLab is presenting are giving you a little bit of science fun in your lives. Another question about taking up the lab. So the question is, did we remove the MarineLab, which you guys saw at the very beginning of our stream, in order to put in the garden? And no, we removed that MarineLab in order to sort of further our education practices. We were able to convert it into a museum and create some curriculum designed around what it's like to be an aquanaut, one of those researchers that lives in the museum or lives in the lab. And essentially be able to teach our students about what it's like to be a scientist living and working underwater. Sarah asks, do you ever see manatees in there in the area that we are looking? And yes, I am sending out my manatee vibes right now. I wish that we were getting lucky to see a manatee, but we do often see manatees in this Emerald Lagoon here. Often when we're doing our swim test, we'll have to kind of put a pause on it because a manatee will swim right through. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you guys next week, next Tuesday at 2 p.m. on Instagram Live. We've also got our live lessons on Facebook that are every Thursday. And just like I mentioned earlier, if you visit our website, marinelab.org, there is a link to our virtual site with all of our virtual materials, all of those classes that we've been teaching, all, of course, available to the public. So thanks, guys, so much, and we'll see you around.